Jeff, you pissed some people off this last week. Talk about it.
All right, so you know the collection we're working on, all right? So
I do know the collection we're working on. It's
Yeah.
massive, and it's taking forever, and comics aren't selling that great.
No. And so I was like, okay, you know what I should try after opening up this box that I did. I did this opening on Instagram. And give me a follow on Golden Age Guru on Instagram, and you can watch the video. And I thought maybe I'll just sell the whole box at once.
Because these boxes, they all have dates on them, because this was all from one buyer, and he would just get boxes from Midtown. He put the year on them, and is it not Midtown?
No, it's not Midtown. It's
Mile
Mile
High.
High. Yeah,
Mile
Mile
High.
High.
Excuse me. He gets a box from Mile High, has a 1997 on the box, and then everything on the inside of that box is from 1997. However, there was a lot of different things that come out, and he was speccing. He was like 25 copies of Gambit number 13. You know, it's just random stuff. But you're having some fun over on Instagram just doing a box break to see what's in there, because we're finding some cool books.
Yeah, there's definitely cool books, and you realize how much isn't. And then you're just ending with this quantity of stuff, and it's like every box has the year correct, but it's also separated by the month that came out. So you're like, okay, I don't know what came out in March of 1997. So I open up one box, and then so to make the video fun, I'll put like the price of the book in its grade.
Yeah, because if you're just showing like 100 books, it doesn't really mean much to the majority of people. But you're putting like, oh, it's $10 a book. Yeah. There's 10 books. That's $100. Hey!
Yeah, near mint, $70 or $100, or near mint, 9.4, you know? So I then tallied the total, and then through editing, I kind of messed it up. But whatever, the big story is I put a price on it. And then I saw a specific comment, and one of the comments was talking about how dealers will price a book at 9.4 when it's raw. And then somebody else followed up that comment and replied to it saying along the lines of, you know, so kind of tired of it or sick of it.
9.4 raw book as a graded 9.4 is what you mean.
Right.
Okay.
Pricing a raw 9.4 the same as a CGC 9.4 or CBCS, you know, whatever. And I started thinking, I was like, okay, that's an interesting conversation, right? Should you price a raw 9.4 the same as a CGC 9.4? Okay, and if the answer is no, well, when do you get the right to price a book the same as a slabbed book? Do you ever get that right? And then what are you putting the value on? Are you putting the value on the grade from a third-party company that most people bitch about anyway in their grading? Or are you putting the value on it being encapsulated? I mean, there's so many little ways you can go down it.
I want to know from the community in the comment section below, but I think I want to kick this to Ryan first, because I do have some thoughts on this. But as someone who doesn't spend a whole lot of money on like 9.8s, etc., what is your feeling about seeing, let's say, a 9.4 raw copy and knowing you can get a 9.4 graded copy? Should those prices be the same? And then the same question in regards to a 9.6, a 9.8, etc.
My gut instinct as somebody who has never dabbled with this side of collecting before is that if it's a 9.4 raw book, you should probably pay less for it than a 9.4 slabbed copy, because you're not guaranteed that it will actually be a 9.4 if you submit it and you get it back. That just seems to be how I feel.
But then there's also this weird caveat to not all 9.4s are worth a bunch of money. So let's use the example that you're giving, Jeff, is like, all right, you have like a $100 9.4 graded, and you have a same book 9.4. What do you price that at with the $100 being the benchmark? But if you have a $10 book that's a 9.4, you get it graded, you may be able to get just over cost of getting it graded for that 9.4 slabbed. If it's like a modern book, call it $40. Do you grade that $10 book only $10, or do you grade it 40? Like, the lower you go, the harder it is to make these decisions, because at a certain point, some books shouldn't be graded.
And it goes a little further than that for me, because I'm just like, I'm not saying like there's a 9.4 here and then a 9.4 next to it, and you choose the raw. Like, most likely you're obviously going to go with the graded, but eye appeal makes a difference too. Like, if this 9.4 looks better than this 9.4, okay, am I going to buy it? And then, and I probably would. Okay, because I'm going to go through it. I'm going to know how to grade. So with that being said, on the raw books, at what point is it okay that a dealer grades a book at the same price? Like, where are we putting the value? Because CGC hasn't always been around. It's only been around since 2000. Comics were being graded long before that, okay? So we're giving the power to the grading company. And I get that, and that makes total sense to me. But I do feel that some dealers have created the amount of people that they have who show up to buy from them because they are good graders. So I don't want to take away from somebody who knows how to grade. Like I said, we already hate on CGC's grading. So now when it comes time to pull the trigger on a book, now we're going to say it's okay. Now it's all right. So it's like you kind of almost have to decide and decipher. And I don't know if there's one answer. Like, most likely you're going to buy the graded copy if it's there. But if it's not there, am I going to go with the 9.4? Yes. And then when I say I need a discount because it's not graded, what is the appropriate percentage? Because everyone's going to have an own number in their head, right? So is it 10%, 5%? Is it even a percentage, right? So there's a lot to think about. So is it fair to get upset with somebody pricing at a CGC price if there isn't a clear set of rules?
So one thing that I've adapted, and I never really thought much of it, but when you brought this up to discuss on the podcast, it made me kind of look internally like, all right, well, how do I handle this for my own selling? And I've always gone back to the Overstreet. There's only pricing up to 9.2 in Overstreet, and that's for good reason. They even say it in there. It's like once you get past a certain point, it's kind of arbitrary. Like you have to kind of go with what the market says. This is why it's a range of sorts. So everything up to a 9.2, I'll price the same. There's no difference to me, you know. Granted, a 9.2 multi-$1,000 book, that may be a little different. And once I get to that point, because again, there's caveats to all of this, I would then go by what the market's saying by looking up, you know, recent sold listings, you know, what has a near mint copy or a 9.2 copy gone for raw. And that may be different than a 9.2 or graded 9.4 copy of the same book. But I tend to stick within that 9.2 range before I start adjusting the price and thinking twice about it. But once you get to like 9.6, 9.8, there's a clear difference in the community. And it's so much to an extent that I'm not even talking about 9.6s and 9.8s because we would all agree if you're selling a 9.8 comic book raw, you're taking such a risk because it is very subjective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't buy a 9.8 raw book or 9.6 raw book without seeing it in person, first of all. Probably even a 9.4, I'll be honest with you. But yeah, the dollar amount does make a difference. But, like, am I going to be okay pricing a, let's see, Brave and the Bold 28, okay? VG Plus, raw. Can I price that the same as a 4.5 VG Plus slab? I think I should have the right to price that. Right? I would think because the grade isn't so exceptional, and then there's a lot that trade in there. So for me, I justify it as like, I think I should be able to do that. Now, do you as a buyer have the right now to negotiate because you're coming from a different point, a little more strength now? You're like, you know, I can't guarantee this. Okay, you can start a conversation easier, and then maybe that person will be able to knock it down for you a little bit. But should you be upset if he says no? I don't think so. I don't think you have that right. Like the amount of work that people have to go through to get comics alone and present them to you. And I think there's a little disconnect between buyer and seller when it comes in this hobby. The buyers feel like the sellers are there for them. You know, like we're here, they can't survive without us. It's not like that. It's a symbiotic relationship. Okay. So it takes a lot of work to get these books and to get them in a way to where they can present them for sale is a whole nother topic, right? You're like, okay, I have to buy it right so I can present it right and negotiate right with the buyer.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
The seller needs to realize that the buyer is coming with only so much money, and they're educated, and there's a lot of things that they are coming with. And once we can all get on the same page, it shouldn't be a contest. It shouldn't be a pissing match. If it's not the right book from you, it's not the right book for you. And so I just feel like there needs to be a little bit more understanding between the two parts. Keep it less aggressive. But I do think if the book is raw, you have a position to come with and negotiate, and you should feel okay to do that. But you should also be okay with somebody pricing it raw at a graded price. Because if you trust that dealer, number one thing, trusting the dealer, and there's a lot of good dealers out there who know how to grade. And some will even undergrade. Okay, so you got to look into that. And then there's ones that don't. So if you're going to a trusted dealer, and especially one that offers a return, there's a lot of big dealers out there that do the right thing. So if something does happen, you can go back to them. You know, this community just needs to be a little bit more understanding of both sides.
I think there's a pretty big percentage of individuals who may be throwing out their opinion about certain types of dealing that they've never experienced, and 95% plus of collectors aren't going to dabble in books that are $1,000+ So I think there's also a caveat to this of, well, you know, they're maybe speaking out of ignorance because they haven't actually gone through that process. Because I for one was shopping for a blue chip Silver Age key last year and secured the Journey 83 behind me. And when comparing this Journey 83 to others, I was looking at like how the back looks like, you know, because that's actually what was causing the price to drop on one 3.0 versus another, or a white pager versus another. And looking at the pricing, it's like, well, it's not as simple as 3.0 equals this amount. Eye appeal was a huge part of this. And when you're talking about lower grade stuff, that grade could be affected by something on the inside of the book. So for me, I'm fine having a 3.0 that presents like a 4 or a 5 versus a 3.0 that's interiors are beautiful, but it's missing a corner of, well, in this case, let's say Thor's left foot.
Yeah, and you would pay more for a nicer 3.0 than you would, you know, for a normal 3.0.
I just want to read. I just want to read comics. This conversation's all over my head. I just want to read.
Well, how do you get those comics?
Yeah, it's trades.
Well, you got to buy them, right?
Yeah.
You don't buy anything at all from a store outside of off the rack.
My pull list. My modern, brand new stuff.
So you don't buy any back issues?
To fill a run.
Well, there you go.
Working on my Green Lantern stuff.
All right, roast Ryan in the chat because we got to get him buying more comic book collectibles. But I don't want you to slow your reading down because you're bringing some good stuff to the table.
I just want to read.